Boohoo. There's another Boohoo, like tears, and there's Boohoo if you're being employed by fast fashion, because there's been some not very nice things coming out lately. It turns out that Boohoo, the fashion company, and slavery have more in common than you might imagine.
It's in Leicester, on this shabby industrial estate, that 40% of Boohoo's clothes are made. Last year, many of its suppliers were mired in allegations of slave labour. It's a world away from Boohoo's glamorous image, selling cheap fashions to its young and trendy customers. The backdrop to its adverts is America, a lucrative market that's now under threat. US law is tough on imports of goods made with forced labour. US Customs is being urged to ban clothes from Boohoo and much of its supply chain in Leicester until proof they are made without exploitation. That was news to factory owner Saeed Khilji. He said a US import ban would hurt, but insisted working conditions had improved greatly.
If American government taking any action, and if they have enough evidence to do that, then yes, there will be an effect. But I'm sure now on, there won't be a problem in Leicester. I'm 100% confident on that.
British lawyer Duncan Jepson has asked for 2 bans, one on Boohoo and one on most of its suppliers. US Customs has told him there's enough evidence to start an investigation.
What obviously we'd all like, those of us who are interested in the improving labour conditions, is for Boohoo to really get to grips with the governance of their supply chain, to ensure that there is no wage theft, to ensure that people have proper contracts.
Boohoo has 14 million online customers. Last year, its profit soared to £92 million. A fifth of its sales were in the United States.
If your business model is that your supply chain's making people work for much less than the minimum wage in appalling working conditions, and you're undercutting the marketplace, that's unfair competition, and you're driving legitimate businesses out of business, and that should never be allowed.
In a statement, Boohoo said, the group has not been notified of any investigation by US Customs and Border Protection, but we are confident in the actions that we are taking to ensure that all of the group's products meet and exceed the CBP criteria on preventing the product of forced labour entering the US or any of our markets.
One of the issues that Leicester reveals is that the brand, Boohoo in this case, has no legal responsibility for what happens in its suppliers. And I think that's of concern, and I know a lot of people in the UK think the law needs to be strengthened so that they are in some way more responsible for what happens in their supply chain.
40% of Boohoo's clothes are made in Leicester's factories. The company says it has already taken action against 64 suppliers who did not meet its standards.
It's what I say. Nothing good ever comes from Leicester. That's the first comment, right? I went to Leicester. We had a film. We were sponsoring a film festival for the magazine that we've got, and I went there, and I knew, I'd heard it might be a bit run down. I'd heard that it might be. I've heard some people say it was a bit of a shithole. Yes, it was. And it's all full of rundown factories, like you've just seen in the video for anyone who's listening on podcast. It's pretty shabby looking. I went past a car park that normally would just be demolished or being demolished, and they just stuck little ropes around it. Don't walk here because it beware falling masonry. Little signs like that. I saw a second-hand shop, like cash converters, and they've got second-hand trainers in the window. It's another world, so it doesn't surprise me that this is based in Leicester. It's a shithole. I mean, that place needs saving.
Yeah, besides where location, there could be lots of reasons for that, couldn't there? Under investment by our government, etc., etc.
Yeah, just move out. Move.
Are you wary of where you buy your clothes from yourself?
Yeah.
So you'd only buy from ethical traders as such?
If I found out that some where I was buying a suit from were employing people like that, I wouldn't buy it. No.
So
same reason I'll buy free-range eggs. Because if you've got a choice between buying them and you know they've come from free-range chickens or chickens in a coop in a battery, I'd rather not help them. I'd rather make sure that's better. It does matter where you buy.
Do you think it'll have an impact on the company as such?
Yeah, I think that negativity, this coverage, even this coverage now, is being negative towards them. They've got a share price. They've got to answer to people, and I think that it does matter. I get you. Where are you coming from? You're probably thinking there'll be some 18-year-old girl who wants this
care one bit
dress and won't care, or this guy who wants this pair of trousers that whatever. See how old I'm sounding.
Well, ask our listeners. I mean, do you care where you buy clothes from? Do you care? Does it matter to you or people around you? Just let us know.
But as pointed out, if this was America, Boohoo would have people in prisons, in private prisons, employed doing that for like $1 an hour, probably. You know, this sort of stuff is wrong, and it always ends up with an underclass, and those people that are employed in those factories, how many of those are going to be black? Or of part of the population that are struggling and are always victimised? There won't be as many white folk in there, and you know it. It's a modern form of slavery. Yeah, it is. Always has been. Thank you for watching. I'm impressed. You've passed the IQ test and got this far, so let's press that button. Let's do the last thing that helps us. It's got subscribe on it, you can't miss it, and please ring the bell for notifications of future videos.